think I should begin by saying that what I've learned is that whatever affinity group that you're marketing to, if they believe that you authentically care about their community, they care a lot less as to whether or not you're a part of that community, okay? So you have to make sure, anybody that's listening, that if you're doing something just because it's a group that you think is target rich and you can make money off of, it's not going to work long term. You have to really deeply care about helping that community, and then that you'll be accepted, because any community that knows this person or people or firm really wants to help me, they open up and they trust you. And that's the key.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. Excited about today's guest. Met today's guest recently and gotten to know him and been really impressed with the stuff he's doing. Glad to get him on here. It's Leonard Spada, who's a personal injury lawyer. I'll say the Boston, Massachusetts area. He can explain exactly where he is, but he's got multiple offices. We'll talk about that. And another thing that I really want to explore is he's doing a lot of really cool things that I'll just call grassroots marketing. So I want to dive into that and find out some of the things he's doing. So Len, thanks for being here. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us about your firm and how many folks you got, how long you've been doing it.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I want to thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. We just met recently at a conference, so I appreciate the outreach. My name is Len Spada. I'm an attorney in the Boston market. My office is in Chelsea, Massachusetts, which borders Boston. So when I tell people my office is in Boston, it's in a city that is adjacent to Boston, but I can walk from my office to Boston. In fact, I grew up in Boston, and I can walk to my child's residence from my office. It's less than a mile walk.
And so how big is your firm?
In preparation for today, it's like we're growing, and sometimes I have to take pen to paper and actually count. So all total, we have 19 people on board, 4 lawyers, 5 case managers, 3 legal assistants, 3 intake staff. We have 2 virtual assistants, and we have a director of operations and an office manager. So I counted that up, and it's 19, and I was like,
That's
wow.
a big operation. I'm with you. No, I lose track. And then nowadays there's so many of these sort of virtual assistant folks. And then do you count them or not? Sometimes you forget about them. I think you should count them, because if they're there and you may have part-time staff as well. I don't know.
No, I don't have any part-time staff, but in thinking about whether or not to count the virtual assistants, they do such important work for us. And the way we've incorporated them into the business with participating in meetings and Zoom meetings, we really feel like we know them and they are parts of the team, because they are. So I think I agree with you. We should count them there, because if they weren't there tomorrow, we would feel their absence. They're important to us.
And I know I've got one virtual assistant now, and she's amazing. She's really amazing. I know there's some.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
We have 2 of them. We can talk about that at some point, but we didn't always have great luck. We've had a couple of virtual assistants who didn't work out for some very interesting reasons, but we have 2 that I really am excited about. They do great work. They're excited. They have great personalities, and they're client facing. Clients are really reacting positively to the interaction. So I'm thrilled.
And I think recently, I think you opened a new location, maybe more than one. How many locations do you have?
2, within the last 6 months, we've opened 2 new locations. And one of them, for the people who are listening, and they may not be familiar with the geography in Massachusetts, but Boston is obviously on the coast. And then we opened up an office in Springfield, which is about 2 hours west of Boston. And for someone like myself who grew up in Boston, it's a place we just didn't go to very often. But we opened an office there because it has a vibrant and growing Latino Hispanic community. And we are doing a lot of work in that community. And it's just being geographically present was important. And we had a unique opportunity present itself to us, so we took it. It was both real estate that was in our wheelhouse financially and contacts that we had made that were very symbiotic, and it just made sense. It wasn't in my plan originally, but I saw an opportunity and we took it. The other location is about 30 miles north of Boston, on the close to the New Hampshire border. The city is Lawrence, Massachusetts, and Lawrence is 80% plus Spanish speaking Latino community. So it was a natural. We service that community from our Boston location, but it's not geographically convenient to clients. And there's so much more opportunity for us there. And we got some great real estate, commercial real estate these days around the country and in Boston as well. You can get, if you negotiate well, you can get some good rates on property that a few years back, prior to the pandemic, you couldn't. So we got some space. And now there's one more location in the back of my mind, but I promised my staff 2025 would be a breather. I did. But my goal is to be within a short drive of close to 90% of the Massachusetts Hispanic
Mm-hmm.
communities. So that's the goal.
Well, I want to dive into both of those things. One, the opening
Okay.
of the offices, and then also, I know you do serve the Hispanic community. I don't want to dive into that as well. But before we do, just
Okay.
real quick. So Boston, which is where you started, I'll just call it the Boston metro area.
Yeah.
I know I'm down here in Atlanta, and for personal injury, period, is competitive as hell. And I would imagine in the cities, it is too. So I'm curious, how competitive would you say the Boston personal injury attorney market is?
Extremely competitive and getting more and more competitive by the day. Massachusetts was a place where, when I'm in Georgia or I'm in Florida or even Arizona, you can't drive 2 miles without seeing a lawyer billboard in any of those states. That was never the case in Massachusetts up to a few years ago. It really wasn't. We had this sort of old school, more puritanical view towards lawyer advertising. And I remember myself as a younger lawyer really looking down and be like, I'm a real lawyer. I try cases and my business will grow just by virtue of my skill set and people knowing about it. And that changed. Morgan and Morgan came to town several years ago, and they took no prisoners. Up on billboards, they did what they do, and they did it in the Boston market, and it changed it for everybody. Now, Boston is in a lot of ways like other states. You drive, and if it's not a cannabis billboard, it's a lawyer billboard. So whether you want to get high or hire a lawyer, billboards are everywhere. It really does seem that way, Jonathan. It seems, okay, there's a new dispensary for cannabis and there's another lawyer. So it's become extremely competitive, and there are a lot of people, a lot of lawyers who have that. I have had a complete change of mindset on that. Like when Morgan and Morgan commercials would come on, my wife would like, oh, those people are on again. She's protecting her turf.
Mm.
And business has never been better since they have come into the market. So whether or not there's a causal relationship or it's just anecdotal, we've never been busier. We've never experienced such rapid growth. And it might be because I responded to their presence and did things. But I also think there's a part of it that people are much more aware that they may have a claim, and more people are thinking about making claims that maybe didn't in the past. And then you have a chance. If you're a good lawyer and you have good reviews and you've been in the community, and people they don't immediately call Morgan, but Morgan may have brought the awareness to them that, hey, maybe I do have a case. And then they start looking around. And you better be good enough when they start looking around, and you better be present enough online and in different mediums to have them find you. So I think that's what happened. It's a combination. We were doing a good job for a long time, and people starting to look. And then we also upped our marketing game considerably because we had to react.
That's
So
interesting to see how it changed over the years. But let's go way back. Let's start at the beginning. I want to hear a little bit about your journey. I think after law school, you went and clerked for a judge for some period of time. Is that right?
I did. Yeah, in Massachusetts, you have the ability, the court system is broken up into the district courts where there are misdemeanors, and it's actually the busiest court where you're drunk drivings and all of those. Then you have superior court where the dollar value of controversies and the crimes are more serious and the civil cases have higher dollar exposures. And then you have the appellate court and you have the Supreme Judicial Court. That's how the system works. So after law school, I had the opportunity to work in the superior court system as a clerk. and a law clerk. And the way it worked when I was doing it was that you would be assigned a judge for a 3-month period. Then you'd get a new judge for another 3-month period. So you'd have 4
Oh, wow.
judges as opposed to being exposed to just one. And through sheer luck, 2 of my 4 judges went on to become federal court judges. So they were really of a high caliber. And it was a great experience. You work at the trial level. So I was always watching trials. I was always helping the judge rule on pre-trial motions, post-trial motions, and I got the opportunity to, unlike a lot of appellate work, I got to watch trials because I knew I wanted to be in the courtroom trying cases as opposed to arguing appeals.
Yeah, that was my next question. Did you know you wanted to be a trial lawyer? It sounds like you did.
It's an interesting story because I went to school for finance and accounting. And while I was in college studying accounting and finance and business, I had an internship at a quasi-governmental entity in Boston called the Boston Redevelopment Authority. You can't build any skyscrapers or buildings or do any development in the city without going through this agency. So I worked there in the finance department. While I was there, my supervisor's husband was the chief homicide prosecutor in Boston. He was always on the news. He was always giving press conferences. He was a superstar. So I would walk across the street and catch some of his trials just because I was curious. And I caught the bug while I was studying accounting. And I'm like, I want to be like Jim Hamrock. Not only was he a great lawyer, he's a great person, high caliber, ethical presence in court, 6'4", 3", and big guy. And he just tried great cases. I really got the bug. I was like, got back into my junior year of college. I'm like, I want to go to law school. But now I'm studying accounting, which isn't the best prerequisite to get yourself into law school. So I knew I had to be near perfect grade wise in order to get into a decent law school because they weren't looking at finance majors and accounting majors. They were looking for a lot of liberal arts majors and poli-sci and economics, stuff like that. So I put my mind to it and I knew I wanted to go to law school in my junior year, which was stunk because I was studying things that I didn't want to study any longer. But anyway, I got myself out and I needed money. I grew up relatively poor. So I needed money. So I worked for a year doing accounting for a big 8 accounting firm, strictly a fundraiser. Like I knew this is just a fundraiser. I worked 90 to 100 hours a week. They grind
Yeah.
you, but I saved everything. So I only had to take loans out for my last year of law school. Then I went to law school.
Yeah, so you knew you wanted to try cases. So after your clerkship, then you went to the DA's office, right? I guess
Correct.
I can't remember his name, but the Jim
Hamrock.
Hemrock, follow his lead, go into the DA's office. So how was that? Do you try a lot of cases, I imagine?
I did. I went to the same DA's office that he was in. I was there while he was still doing his thing. I was so junior that I never actually got to. He was trying the most serious offenses, the ones that the public was aware of, and I was just starting. Yeah, I did. I stayed there for 3.5 years or so, and I tried a lot. I had over 100 jury trials when I left.
That is amazing.
And that was my plan too, because they paid crap. When I was in my most senior moments in the office, I had lawyers working for me, and I was making $29,000 a year. It's hard to get married, raise a family, and even back then, I'm older, but even back then, that wasn't a ton of money. But so my goal was to get in there and I tried everything. Give it to me. It needs to be tried. I'll try. Give it to me. So I was very aggressive in taking on cases to try. And I had fun. I tell people all the time, it was probably one of the most fun jobs I've ever had in my life. Once you stop playing competitive sports, for some of us it's in high school, some of us it's in college, but most of us stop playing at a very young age. If you still have those competitive juices flowing through you, trial work really satisfies. And the intellectual battles in court and thinking on your feet, and also knowing that you were working on the side of victims and doing some really good work. It was fun. It was really
I
fun.
would imagine too, 100 jury trials in 3 years, that's a ton. You can't prepare probably
No,
like to. So you're
no,
going in there and it's like old
no.
school Wild West where you're going in almost.
Again, I was trying at the beginning drunk driving cases, okay? And once you've tried 5 or 6 of them, it's a pretty standard operating procedure on how you're getting these cases in. The real craftsmanship came in making sure your closing arguments were getting better each time, making sure your cross examinations were getting better. You're right. You could not, now, if I have a civil case, the level of preparation to try a complicated civil case is insane. It's so much more work. But you're still thinking on your feet. The DA's office was a great training ground for just getting up and making arguments and trying to be
I
persuasive.
mean, there's
It
there's
was good.
something to be said, just doing it to be comfortable. Civil cases, I don't do a ton anymore, but typically I imagine your cases too. You've deposed all the main witnesses, so you pretty much know what they're going to say, pretty much. Where,
If you've done your job right,
yeah,
you do.
but those cases
Yeah.
you probably come in and you're cross-examining, you're not sure what they're going to say.
That's actually what produced the adrenaline in those cases, too. I remember some cases that I had where I was prosecuting a drug dealer from one of the neighborhoods of Boston, and it was a big deal to the community. I'll never forget a case I had where I had local politicians, state representatives, who that was their district, and this guy was a bad guy, and they wanted to make sure the police did their job, the prosecutors did their job. And I'll never forget it. I'm a young guy, and I have the press is in the back, police are there, the local politicians are there, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is cool and terrifying all at the same time. It's cool because it's terrifying and really. And then you try this case for a week, and then the verdict, the jury stands up to read the verdict, and there was multiple charges, and the first two counts they are not guilty. So you hear not guilty. As I was just saying that to you now, I still remember how I felt. That I was, oh my God, I'm going to lose this, and I'm going to have to give a press conference, and I'm going to have to talk to my boss, and so count one not guilty. I'm like, oh no, count two not guilty, and they were the least serious of the offenses. But I thought maybe it was a harbinger of things to come. But the rest of them were guilty, and the guy ended up doing considerable time in jail. And I was like, oh, thank God. But that was cool to be able to have those types of experiences as a very young lawyer. Because you don't get that. As you get older and you try these civil cases, there are parts of it that are exciting, but there are parts of it that are really dry too, like really dry. You're talking about the building code and why a particular hand railing gave way, and you have to try to keep jurors awake when you're experts at testimony. It's a little different than it was dark out, and the guy came in with a gun, and gunshots rang out, and people were like, they're
Uh-huh.
listening. It's not like that. It's not like that in Slip and Fall.
That's cool. 100 cases, that I mean, jury trials, that is huge. You just can't get that. Maybe
Can't get it in private
yeah,
practice.
can't get that really nowadays. So, all right, so let's move on. So you got all this experience, really great experience, but you weren't making much money, and for some reason you said, "All right, I got to go make some money." So what'd you do next?
I had a wife, and I still have her. She's been around a long time. We just celebrated 30 years of marriage, and we met in college. We've been together
Oh,
38.
congrats.
She's wonderful. But we wanted to have a family. I needed to earn more. There were people in the DA's office, and I envied them. They had either family wealth or whatever. I'm assuming it's family wealth. We're all in our 20s. Um, and they could make a career out of being a prosecutor. And I think I might have done that if money was not an issue. But I wanted to buy a home. I wanted to have children. I wanted to do what a lot of young couples wanted to do. And the salary that I was making just wasn't. So I left. I got a job offer doing civil litigation for it's funny story is when I was contemplating leaving the DA's office, I sat down with my wife and I said, okay, we want to make sure I have some options. And I remember talking to her. She's like, yeah, you got to make sure it's a stable firm, one that's been around a long time, has a good reputation. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense because I had some offers from more entrepreneurial, like firms that are just getting going. They wanted someone who could try cases, which probably would have been super fun. But I didn't know, are these people going to make it? Am I going to be looking for a job in 6 months or a year? So I go with this established Boston firm. The name of the firm was Parker, Coulter, Daly and White. And you notice I said was because I got there in 9 months. This firm had been around for 92 years before I got there. 9 months after I got there, partner squabbling dissolved the entire firm. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Luckily, a group of lawyers were taken by another big firm, and I was an associate. So the partner I worked for took me with him and the group to another really prominent firm in Boston, and I landed well. Our salaries automatically
Mhm.
went up and I enjoyed it. And the partner I worked for was he was a genius, and he was generous with his time so I learned so much on the civil side from him. He went on to become a superior court judge and a very well-known and respected judge. So I got really lucky with my mentor. And then I worked there for 4 years, and then I started my own firm.
So while you were there, did you get to try any civil cases? Or
I did. And I was just having this conversation with someone the other day, a young lawyer. I had lunch with a young lawyer yesterday, someone that I got my eyes on. I would love to maybe have him like what I'm selling and come on board someday. He's a great guy. And we were talking about, because he's trying cases as a young lawyer and he's losing his share of cases. And I said, listen, when I was on the defense side, I did defense work at this firm. I represented a chain of supermarkets. So I, like, every time there was a slip and fall case that went to trial, and I was winning them left and right. I thought I was Clarence Darrow. You know, it's like, I'm really the cat's ass here. I can't lose. And I was telling this young lawyer, I said, and then I went out on the plaintiff side and I got my butt kicked on the first few that I tried as a plaintiff's lawyer. I was like, wow, did I lose my fastball, or is this stuff just different? And plaintiff's work is harder. You're telling the story. You're not just trying to rip it apart. You have the burden of proof. It's much harder. I'm not minimizing what defense attorneys do. Some of them are great, but it's eye-opening once you have to put the case together.
It's interesting you say that. Part of it is you got to craft the story and tell it, like you said, and not rip it apart. But the other thing I've seen, the defense mentality, if you're there too long, it's a delay and you're probably overworked. So you can barely keep things, but you're not pushing the cases necessarily. We're on the plaintiff side. You got to push, because if you don't, you're not getting paid, right?
Yeah, your interests are not aligned. I've told defense lawyers who get too uppity and take things too personally, I was like, listen, this is a very symbiotic relationship. If I don't file suits, you don't have anything to defend. So let's have some mutual respect for what we do. Okay. And there might be an area of a file or a case that we're going to fight over. And when I say fight, we're going to disagree and we're going to go at it hard. But overall, we both go home to our families. We're working long hours. And there are some, you're right, though, there are some defense lawyers who are rabid defense lawyers, and it's a philosophical thing for them. And I just don't think they would be terrible plaintiffs lawyers. And then there's another group who are really skilled lawyers who see it for what it is, resolve the claims that need to be resolved, try the cases that need to be tried, be cordial with opposing counsel, and just practice law the way I think law should be practiced. I'm not saying don't be zealous. I'm just saying don't be a jerk, and try to keep your eyes open too, because a good plaintiff's case is a good plaintiff's case, and a good defense attorney should look at it, be able to evaluate it, and be able to tell the powers that be, I'll do what you tell me, but you have high exposure here. The plaintiff is a good plaintiff. The lawyer's a good lawyer. The facts are good. The law's on their side. This case is one that, but their interests are not aligned. They get paid by the hour. Why would I want to resolve a case when I know there's another $15,000 in bills that I could reasonably rack up, right? I'm thinking from the plaintiff's point of view, efficiency is important. There's no need to do that. There's no data, there's no information, there are no facts that are going to change what we have here. But then I've learned to accept. Do what you got to do. Get all the discovery done as quickly as you can, and remove all billable hour options for them, and then the case usually gets resolved.
So you were on that side for a little while, on the defense side, but at some point you decided to switch and go out on your own. So I want to hear, I guess the first thing is, why did you feel like you wanted to switch? And then what was the spark? What pushed you to actually do it? Because I know that's a big decision. And I know a lot of attorneys talk about it, but they just never do it.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted decision for me. Doing the defense work, practice at a high level, I'm proud of it. I'm not embarrassed to say I'm a very good lawyer. I really, truly feel that. I work hard, and I think I'm really good at it. When I was doing it, I was aware that I was getting better and better at this. I was also aware that some of the plaintiffs' lawyers I was going up against, not all of them, but some of them were of poor caliber and were not giving their clients a really good fight at all. They were allowing clients to be steamrolled by lawyers like myself at that point, who were doing the steamrolling, and I didn't feel good about it. I also saw how much money I paid, when I say my clients paid, to lawyers who I thought were well below me on skill level. And I see these lawyers who are clearly making more money than me, clearly providing for their family better than I am, having a better lifestyle than I am, who I don't think are even close to being as good a lawyer as I am. That was in my head. I remember I was a poor kid from East Boston, I definitely had in my mind, I would like to be a high earner at some point. I also was able, while I was at this defense firm, to begin taking some plaintiffs' cases. They allowed me to. So I had a friend who eventually became my law partner, who right out of law school, didn't know anything, opened up his own shop. I loved him. We'll talk about him in a minute. But he would call me up constantly. Hey, I got this. What do you think of this? What do you think? And I was constantly taking calls from his name's Vin. I was like, how does this guy get all these people calling him? He doesn't even know where the courthouse is. So I would give him all this. So he would send me things, and I would ask the firm if I could keep the case. I had a select few cases that were decent. Traumatic brain injury case, one sticks in my mind. So I was now preparing cases, plaintiff's cases, in a 95%, 98% defense atmosphere. And there were obstacles and barriers. I had to go through a contingent fee committee where I would present why this is a case the firm should allow me to hold, give them a budget on what my expenses look like. It was a pain in the ass, okay? Because there were times when by the time I could get back to a client and say, yes, I can accept your case, they had gone to another firm in Boston. And on the ones that they did allow me to keep, every time I needed an expert, and in order to prosecute a personal injury case, you need to have the financial wherewithal to hire experts. They would give me pushback. Do you really need an expert? I'm like, it's a traumatic brain injury case. How do you expect me to try this? I can't get up there and talk about a brain injury or a neuropsych exam. And I ran into it, and they knew that because they did the defense of this stuff, and it became a complete pain. I got frustrated. So I reached out to Vin, who kept calling me, trying to send me work, and I made a decision. I was just a few months away from a partnership vote where I was on the ballot, and so I can't definitively say I would have become a partner. But when I gave my notice to leave, they told me to stay. The partnership vote's coming. So I can only read into it. It was a done deal that I would have become a partner. But there was a breaking point. One of the partners called me into the office. We were talking about a case. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. My wife was pregnant. We were having our first child. I was excited. And the partner had a picture on his desk of his son with a soccer ball. It's picture day, and cute little kid. Probably was like 8 or 10, and he had his soccer ball, big smile. And I was just thinking about, I'm going to have a kid soon. I'm excited. So I said to him, oh, your boy, good looking boy, he must be a great soccer player. I'll never forget. He looked me in the eye and he said, so I'm told, with a straight face. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, Len, if you stay in this business, you're not going to watch a lot of soccer games. That was it. I was
That's
done.
sad. That's sad.
And he meant it. And that was a long time ago. That was 1998. And I still can hear him saying that. And I was like, I'm done. I'm out. And I made my plans and got an office space. And we started working on behind the scenes on doing what we did. And my wife was like 8, 9 months pregnant. She thought I was, God bless her. She stuck by me. But there must have been moments when she was like, what are we doing
Yeah,
here?
you go from a steady paycheck to the plaintiff side where maybe your friend said, I'll front you some money, but so you're like, all right, I'm going from this money to zero. You're about to have a baby, and trust me, it's going to be great. How'd you sell that?
From hero to zero.
How'd you sell
Yeah.
that?
Fortunately, my wife was working at the time. My wife's always done very well. She's a very smart executive. And so I've had the blessing of having, at least early on, two incomes so I could take a shot. I also had a lawyer who became a friend who was overwhelmed with work. So as soon as I stepped out, he couldn't wait to dump smaller, somewhat crappy plaintiffs' personal injury cases on me. So I had some work to do. And necessity is the mother of invention, they say. I had never felt so full of hustle. And this has to work. There's no plan B. And I haven't felt that way in a while. And there are times in my career where I wish I had felt more of it because I got into the fat and happy stage where you lose your innovation, you lose a little spark because life's too full. There's money, there's food, there's housing. You don't have any deprivation in your life. And it's hard to recreate that feeling if it doesn't truly exist.
That point, that is so true. And I've been at those moments in my life too. You're comfortable, it's great, but comfort is the enemy of doing cool stuff sometimes because you're not going to do it. And then I also think about, and I've talked to other people about this, but my kids. So we create this environment that is so comfortable for them too. It's how do you instill in them that grit and that drive and whatnot, because it's hard. And I've always found I don't like overwhelming stress and fear, but I like a little. You want a little that's going to push you to do things that maybe you wouldn't otherwise do.
You just said something that I have thought about a lot. My son will be 27 in January, and my daughter is 24. And I now know that I don't have to worry about them having the grit and all that. When they were younger, I saw how I grew up, and I saw what motivated me to really work harder than most people. I was obsessed. And then I saw how my wife and I were raising our children. They grew up affluent. Okay. They grew up in a beautiful home. They went to private schools. And so on one hand, I was this old school Italian first generation, like I want to give my kids everything. Then I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I hope they don't become these soft wimps and have no drive. And you use the word grit, which is a great book, by the way. And we worried about it. So I think I was tough on the kids in a certain way and pushed them a little, maybe at times a little too hard in athletics, and because that was an avenue that they both pursued. And there's a lot of opportunity in youth sports and high school sports to push somebody to see what they're made out of. And fortunately, I think my wife mainly, but I think we both did a really good job saying, hey, kids, you're not wealthy. Maybe mom and I are, but you're not. The old Shaquille O'Neal, like his kids came to him and said, hey, Dad, we're rich. And his response was, we're not rich, I'm rich, which I think is a great way of looking at it if you happen to have been blessed with having a good living and being comfortable. So definitely an issue. People think that, oh, you have no concerns. Well, you don't want to raising spoiled, entitled brats. You've done the world a disservice by
Yeah.
doing that.
It sounds like yours
Yeah,
are doing well. Kudos to you on
they
that.
are. God bless. Yeah, they're doing great.
Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. So I want to get back. So you left and you went out with your friend. So you started the firm, you had a partner. And I want to fast forward a little bit because I understand that at some point he passed away suddenly. And that has to be just a traumatic sort of experience. You've got your partner there and all of a sudden they're not. And then you're having to deal with the emotions, but then also deal with the business too. Take me back a little bit. What was that like in the moment? How did you handle it?
It was a seismic event. Okay. It was named Vinzulo. The name of the firm was Spada and Zullo. And we had been practicing for 18 years together. And one Monday morning, we get a phone call. I saw him on Friday. I said, oh, Vin, chat with you. Have a great weekend. And we both had kids, similar ages, and we had a lot in common. And we get a phone call, and it's a crying, screaming woman on the other end of the phone. He's gone. And I didn't take the call, but I could hear Robin, who has worked for me, or whether it was Joan, saying, oh, what are you talking about? Who's gone? And I saw the look on their face. Then he died. He had a massive heart attack on a Monday morning in his home and died. They couldn't revive him. And he had a teenage daughter living home at the time who was trying to give him CP. It was terrible. Okay. So, like, the shock of losing someone that I loved and was like a brother to me. We had so many fun times together. Just think of a couple of kids from the city who started a law firm and they're doing well. And we had so much fun. We had a lot of fun. We worked hard, really hard, but we had a lot of laughs. He was just someone, I loved him. Okay. And he was gone. And he was a rainmaker. He was not the technical guy. Okay. That was my role. I was the one litigating the cases. He was making it rain. His family had strong ties in the area that we had our firm. They owned businesses. They were very well known. So we got a lot of business just because Vin knew everyone. And Vin was the type of guy, if you saw him, everyone loved him. He couldn't go to a Bruins game or a Patriots game without giving out 50 cards, call me. And he was everybody's friend. And I learned a lot about soft marketing and relationship marketing from watching him. But he died. And now I had a staff, I had to run the firm. And to make things worse, Jonathan, 2 weeks after he died, I was diagnosed with
Oh,
cancer.
man.
So now I can imagine the resumes were flying out. This ship is about to hit the iceberg and it's going. That worked out. I got healthy. It wasn't the type of cancers. It was the type, someone says you have to have it, it's the kind you want. So everything worked out. But I was terrified, both from a business and a personal point of view. but we managed. We have some of the staff members are still with me today, and I give them all the credit. They just like put their heads down. We're not leaving, you know?
Yeah. So my last firm, I joined, and then within 6 months, one of the partners passed away. But it was like six of us, six partners, and I think we had maybe eight associates. So we had a pretty big bench to come around it. And I frankly didn't really know her that because I'd barely been there. But we were pretty diversified, I'll say, in terms of the different people so it was a little bit easier to survive and we could come around it. But with you, like you said, the rainmaker or one of the big rainmakers gone, your longtime friend just boom, a void. So
It was horrible.
how did you carry it on? I mean, and then, of course, you said you had your own cancer scare. So how did you get through it?
Not without the support of, it sounds like a cliche, but not without a lot of support from my wife and my family and my staff. I have to really give a huge shout out to the rocks that are still there. I mean, I have two women, one who's worked with me for 21 years and one who's worked with me for 17 years. And they're amazing. Without them, I would not have been able to pull out of this spiral. The woman's name is Robin, the other one is Joan, and I try to stay away from we're a family type discussion because business is business, but they're about as close as family to me as anyone in the business world could be. And they just refused. They worked tirelessly. It was not a 9 to 5 job for them, and they were committed to helping me. And what we did do is, I think another shout out goes to Ben Glass. I didn't know how to market. I never had to go out and it wasn't people say, the expression, you kill what you eat. I was eating what somebody else was killing, and I needed to go find my own customers and clients. So I joined Ben Glass's Great Legal Marketing. Ben taught me not just the nuts and bolts, which I did learn from him, but also a mindset, a growth mindset. He's been an unbelievable mentor to me. And without him and what I've learned from him and the confidence that he gave me, that I could do this. I think that's the main thing. You can learn marketing in different places, but without the confidence that, hey, you can do this and we'll show you how. And I started to learn how to market and I developed my own skill set for business. I wasn't just the trial lawyer. I need to find the clients as well. So knowing that, I guess it's necessity. It goes back to necessity. I needed to figure out how to market, or I needed to hire someone to market for me. And that was never really a serious consideration,
So
you
that's a
know?
good segue. So you do some really good stuff. I'll call it grassroots marketing stuff. And so it's a good segue to talk about that. I heard you speak about that at the conference a couple weeks ago. And two things that stood out to me is you're very active sort of in the biker community. You get a lot of cases there. So you're active there. And then you mentioned earlier also in the Hispanic community. And the thing that's interesting to me is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is
Know what you're going
you're
to
not a
say.
biker. And do you speak Spanish? Un
Poquito.
poquito? Yeah.
Entiendo español un poquito. Hablo español. No.
And so that's really interesting to me. A lot of people that I'll call it affinity marketing, they have a connection
Yeah.
to the group. Either they're in it or it's their culture, whatever. But you're there a little bit. How did you cultivate that and really get into those communities and make it work?
Well, I think I should begin by saying that what I've learned is that whatever affinity group that you're marketing to, if they believe that you authentically care about their community, they care a lot less as to whether or not you're a part of that community. Okay. So you have to make sure, anybody that's listening, that if you're doing something just because it's group that you think is target rich and you can make money off of, it's not going to work long term. You have to really deeply care about helping that community, and then that you'll be accepted, because any community that knows this person or people or firm really wants to help me, they open up and they trust you. And that's the key. So with the biker community, when I was very young, I rode briefly. Okay. When I was like in my teenage years, I had a Honda 750 Super Sport that I would ride. And my mother, old school Italian, was just terrified I was going to kill myself. If you've ever seen how I drive a car, you would agree that I should not be on a bike. Okay. I'm not a good driver. And I finally accepted that. But the community, the biker community, is one that I got exposed to by handling cases here and there. And I got to meet people in the community. And I'm really fond of the community. They are, for all the stereotypes that exist about bikers, some of them are true and some of them are not. Okay. They're not all one percenters. They're not all got a criminal rap sheet, just like every other community. Some don't. But one thing that's true in that community is they are a community. They care about one another. They come to each other's aid when that's needed. They love one another. They're dysfunctional to the extent that we all have some crazy stuff about us. But the way they stick together is both what I love about them and what has made it such a great group to market to. That if one biker tells another biker you need to call Len, they're all calling me. Okay, so I'm a trusted advisor to a community. So they call me for car accidents. It's New England. They're only riding their bikes for 10, 12 weeks out of the year. So I'm getting car accident cases and workers' comp cases and slip and fall, whatever they need, they'll call me. Okay. So I love that group. They're fun to hang out with too. Now, do I go out with them all the time? No, I don't ride. And some of them are younger and rougher. And, I'm an older guy. I like to go home at night. But they're a fun group. So when we have events, I love seeing them. They're one of my favorite events of the year is the rallies, the rides that we do. On the Spanish side, that came to be because I was geographically, the original office in Chelsea is geographically in a community that has become predominantly Hispanic. When I grew up, we were predominantly an Italian community. My grandparents came over from Italy, immigrants. People weren't speaking English, they were speaking Italian. It's just changed over the decade. But my presence in this location was a constant. So I started getting some Spanish clients here, some Spanish clients there. And I quickly realized that the immigrant experience that I was seeing in front of me every day with Latinos wasn't much different, except for the language, than what I experienced. And I always felt God gives us all talents and things that we need to make sure we use those talents and give them away and help. And as odd as it sounds, helping people through the process of a catastrophic injury or an injury case where they don't speak the language, they're confronted with a legal system that's foreign to them, and us being their advocates, and so the David versus Goliath mentality. I love sticking up for the underdog. I love sticking up for somebody that might be treated differently because their language is not English or then their country of origin is not the United States. So I like sticking up. I think I have that anti-bully DNA,
That's perfect
and
for a plaintiff's lawyer, right?
it
Yeah.
really is. And one of our slogans is we make it a fair fight, and we do. And you get some immigrant from another country comes here, gets into a bad accident, we file a lawsuit, or insurance companies, not all of them, I'm not trying to paint them all with the same brush, but there are definitely instances where I've seen, because my client had a Spanish or Hispanic last surname, or they were a blue collar worker, or they were treated differently than if I had a white affluent client who I represent as well. The disparity of treatment's not going to happen on my watch. And I've always taken that city kid mentality to the courtroom, to the practice of law. So I love it. And I have found that if you treat the community, the Latino community, with respect and you give them a really serious, fair fight, they're very loyal. Okay. Then they're not likely to go call another lawyer. You're their lawyer. I have one family with the last name I won't mention for confidentiality, but from 1998, when I opened, to today, her family has come over, in droves with all their cousins. I have so many. So when you're migrating data from one case management system to another, I'm like, oh my God, look how many. And that makes me happy
Hmm.
that we've been a trusted member of the community for that long. That's who you call. And I have staff members who have been referred to me by this woman, and really good staff members, like gems. That's how, and so I don't speak Spanish. I've been learning. I don't know about you. I'm having a hard time having it stick. I'm so busy doing other things, and
You almost just
I
have
don't.
to go live somewhere for nine
Yeah,
months.
yeah. I was taking Spanish lessons every Wednesday online, and I was getting a little better. And then the summer came, and I stopped. And I get back into it, but I do appreciate when you make an effort. So when they come to the office and I try, they'll laugh at me but that's okay. I think they still appreciate the effort, and our office, out of the 19 people we have, there's only 4 of us who do not speak Spanish. So there's 15 out of 19 Spanish speakers. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool. There's not a lot of law firms out there that
that is cool.
that can say that.
You also talked earlier about these new locations that you opened, and that's related to the Spanish speaking communities. But what's it like? I've talked to some other attorneys who've opened another location. What's I'll just say your process? All of a sudden, you're having to manage a remote office. I don't know how many people are actually staffed there.
Yeah.
And then you got all the blocking and tackling, getting the internet in there and the furniture and all that stuff you have to do. How do you manage it? And what's your thought process as you consider opening new offices?
Don't open an office if somebody calls and says, I want to come to do an intake with you. If you can't accommodate them, don't just have a physical office for Google business profile's sake. I think having a physical office is very important. I do not think initially on day one you have to have it staffed 8 hours per day. We don't. We have our Springfield office, we have somebody full time in the Springfield office. The Lawrence office is close enough to my Chelsea location that we man that a few days per week. Okay. With the goal of gradually adding people and time so that it's a fully open. Our Chelsea office has most of our employees, but we do have employees who go to other locations. It's also very important if you want to service a particular area. The way our marketing is these days, I know the people that are listening to this, some of them might be well versed in digital marketing and what's the importance of having a physical location. When somebody in Lawrence is looking for a lawyer and they Google, I need a lawyer near me, or I need a car accident lawyer near me, or a malpractice lawyer near me, the signals, Google's algorithm and signals, they're going to present people to this person that's looking for someone who has a geographic location. So I can't have a meaningful presence in a community without a physical office, in my opinion. Okay. And in the Hispanic community, especially, that ability to go to your lawyer's office, to talk to somebody, to drop off documents that you may have received, they still like that much more and utilize that much more than the English speaking community. In our main office, the vast majority of in person intake, the vast majority, we're probably 90+%, are Spanish speakers. They want to come in, they want to see an office, they want to meet their lawyer, they want to meet people. Whereas my English speaking new clients will do a Zoom. Do I have to come in? I don't want to come in. So it's a real stark difference between the two communities. So having a physical presence, even if it's not staffed 25 days a week, 8 hours per day, is really important. Talked about the nuts and bolts of internet. That's a pain in the neck. I'm not going to lie. Okay. We have an IT person who sets up the offices, and it's definitely work to get it up and running. And
So does Lynn go to all the offices, or are you spending time at all the offices throughout the week, throughout the month?
I do. I'm next week. Springfield's a ride. Springfield's 2 hours, so I'll go out there. My goal is to get out there a couple times a month. Lawrence, a little bit more than that. But yeah, I see my role evolving so that I was just having this discussion with my wife. Like my goal is to be a day or two in the main office and then a couple of days in the other offices. I like doing that. I think that's probably a good use of my time, is to get out into those communities myself, to meet people in those communities. So it's something I enjoy too.
So you've been at this for a good long time. You've been through a lot of different sort of iterations of your career. Sounds like things are going great. You're up into new offices. What's looking down the road? What's the long term or the longer term vision for you? Where do you see things going?
Well, longer term vision is to be the premier personal injury firm in Massachusetts for the Hispanic community. So that it's, you know, if you're a Hispanic in Massachusetts and you need a personal injury lawyer, we're at top of mind. Obviously, in the same conversation with some of the real big names, but we want to own that niche. We really do. Personally, my goal is to never retire, but not always work as many hours. My wife is still working, so my personal goal is, once become grandparents, which I'm hoping is soon. My son's getting married in July. I'm hoping he doesn't wait too long. I'm really looking forward to having grandchildren. And then when that happens, I know my wife probably doesn't want to work anymore, and she'll want to spend a lot more time with the grandkids. And what I want to be able to give her and my grandchildren is time. So I would like to keep the firm, have a reduced work schedule so that my wife and I can do some personal travel. We put a lot of things on hold, raising kids, building a business, while we're still healthy, do some traveling. spend some time with our grandkids. But I will never be the type that I'm retired and I golf a lot and I like work. Like I get, and people listening to this might be like, oh, he's full of crap. I wake up on a Monday morning. I really am excited to get started, to see my staff, to get involved in the business of the law. It is what it is. It's not for everybody. I love it. So for me to wake up and not have my firm, which is like another child to me, I don't want that. But I do want to be able to say, I'm golfing today. My wife and I are going to Europe for 10 days, and I know the firm runs without me, which it does very well right now. There's a few components that I'm working on that once those are done, the need for me daily in the firm will be almost zero. And then we'll work on how does the firm grow without me? Like the firm can operate without me, but it's not the point where it can grow without me. And
That's the last frontier.
it really is. And I need a lot of help with that. And I'm asking people way smarter than me for advice on how that, because I'd like to back away, but still see it on a good trajectory. I don't want to see it die. You see some people, they leave their firm or they start working part time and the firm sort of loses its culture and starts to fade away. I don't want that.
I'm with you. It's fun for me, and it's like another child, and you want to see the child
It is.
thrive and grow and all that. So I'm with you on that. So you've got a few more steps. You're pretty far along on the evolution of building a business, building a law firm. For those that are not as far along, or maybe just not getting started, do you have any pieces of advice on going out and getting it started?
Find a mentor, find people that are already doing what it is you think you'd like to do and learn from them. Okay. It's like I learned so much. I stagnated for so long because I didn't take the step to get a mentor, to sit in a room with people who are far ahead of me on the business journey and learn from them. And there are people out there who are so willing to teach. I will be one of those as well at some point. I love mentoring, but that was what changed my life the most is getting a mentor, getting into groups. Don't think of joining mastermind groups or marketing groups or as a cost on a profit and loss statement. They are pure investments. Some investments have higher returns than others, so you may have to learn from trial and error, but get into a room where you're learning what it is you want to learn and what it is you need to learn, and do that as early on in your career as possible because it compounds. It really does. And the things that I've learned sitting in mastermind groups is mind boggling. Like I'm doing things now and people be like, oh my God, it's such a great idea. I'm like, it's not my idea. You know what I mean? It's like some generous lawyer from Arizona sat down with me and took a Zoom call and I sent them a gift card for a restaurant. It's like people are willing to help people. That would be I have a son who's an engineer and I keep trying to explain to him, and my daughter now is entering the workforce. There are also other things you need to do. Publish if you have an opportunity, become a subject matter expert as quickly as you can. If you have an opportunity to speak on a subject, it's a lot of work. None of this, there isn't a silver bullet, but there are things that you can do that will expedite your progress.
I'm all with you on the investment versus cost. A lot of lawyers have this mentality of it's a cost, it's an expense.
I had that
But
too.
it's interesting. Most of us took 3 years out of the workforce, paid a bunch of money to go to law school, and it costs money, but we all view that as an investment, and hopefully it's paying off, right? And then all of a sudden you get out of law school and you're like, I don't ever want to invest in my career again. A lot of people have that attitude.
Yeah, I agree with you. The law school is a ticket to get into the game. Okay. Once you get into the game, you need to learn the rules of the game. You need to watch the players who play the game well, and you need to be the backup quarterback for a while and learn. And I just wish, and sometimes I have this regret, I just wish I did. I'm doing a lot of great things now. And I'm a little pissed that I'm 59 years old. I wish I was doing it at 39 or 49 because my runway would have been a little bit longer. And I don't get too crazy with that regret, but I'm doing some really good stuff now. And I just wish I had started earlier. And for anybody that's listening, I'm giving good advice on the get a mentor, learn. It sounds so trite, get a mentor, but it's how else are you going to learn unless you're in a firm environment where you have fellow employees and supervisors and partners who are prepared to train you. But if you're an entrepreneurial type and you want to go out and venture out into on your own, I think that's the way to go. Nothing's more exciting, not knowing if you're going to survive. It's pretty
Yeah.
exciting.
And it's interesting. No matter how far along you are, and you are very far along, you always feel like you see people that are farther along, and then sometimes you forget how far you've come, and
That's a great
you've done a lot, just like a lot of people have too. And I know I look ahead at people like you and others, and I'm like, damn, they're so far along. I got to do more. I got to do all these things to get there, and I do. But everybody, there's always more to do. But I think
Well, that's a great point, John. You got to celebrate the wins too, and I don't do that nearly as much. I don't look at other people farther along than me with envy, or I'm happy that I've gotten to this point in my life where I'm actually happy for people, but I am parasitic in the sense that, okay, I want to learn. How did you do that? Like, you have to have that curiosity. And it's not just older people that are doing better than me. I see some younger people who are killing it. And I'm really proud to see that. And I want to learn how they did it. And I want to, sometimes generationally, some of us who are older, damn, I didn't even, for example, just the digital stuff. Like, I see lawyers on TikTok, my eyes don't roll anymore in ridicule. I'm like, that guy or that woman's got it going on. Look at the kind of business that he or she is developing. Might not, it not, might not be right for me. It's not going to fit my personality to do a TikTok dance or something. It's just, or you, whatever. But there's so much to learn from people who are ahead of you that are older, people who are ahead of you that are younger. Somebody who's 30, who's already so farther along on the path than you. That's pretty cool. They figured something out,
the other cool
right?
thing with Ben Glass, you mentioned earlier in Great Legal Marketing, there are people that are doing all these things, and I think it's cool. So, like for me, there's all these things you can do, and they all work. They work better when you do all of them together, probably, but you can't do them all at once. And you just have to build brick by brick. And you might be really good at TikTok and not good at something else, or vice versa. And it's okay, I'll borrow a little of that, and maybe I'll start building with those bricks too.
That's something else I'd like to leave anyone else that's watching this, that's thinking about it. When I first joined Great Legal Marketing, I came away from their summits and it was like drinking from a fire hose, to use that analogy that everyone talks about. And I did everything, but I did it too fast. Like, I never had a print newsletter. I had a print newsletter. I implemented everything I could to the expense of cash. So it was like, oh my God, I've done all of this. I've blown through all my money. Okay. And it's pretty simple. I was a finance accounting major. This isn't rocket science. I had to know this could happen, but I didn't give it enough thought. I was so excited about doing everything. You make a good point. When you go and you learn something, have a plan. Okay, this quarter, I would say live by quarters, have a 90-day plan and implement something, not multiple things. Don't get yourself to the point where you're overwhelmed, but pick one and then be obsessive about making sure that you get that launched in Q1, Q2, whatever quarter you're in. And then you'll be amazed at how, if you break your life down into 90-day periods like that and you implement small. I look back now and I think of all the things I've implemented. I had somebody that works for me, her name's Robin, who said to me, and it meant a lot to me. She said, you're the captain of the ship. And I'm amazed that she's known me for so long. All the risk that you're willing to take and all the things that you've implemented. Look at us. So it made me feel good because celebrate those small wins. And she's been around for the whole ride. And she realizes that she's driving a much nicer ship than she had when we first started. And that made me feel good. But I think if I had to go back in time, I would try not to eat the elephant in one bite.
And that's great advice. And we've been going a while. You've been very generous with your time. I appreciate you sharing your journey, and you've been through a lot. And I think people can get a lot from this. So, really appreciate you coming on, and love getting to know you,
Yeah.
man. Can't wait to get to know you more.
Well, I want to thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed chatting about this. But we talk about mentorship and we talked about the importance of it. And I want anyone that's watching it to know that I'm very serious, that if somebody's watching this and has a question or wants to ask me something more about some of the things I've done in the past, I'll be more than happy to discuss all the failures as well so they don't make them. And I'm available. I enjoy that. So if there is a younger or even older lawyer out there who wants to reach me, I'd give my cell phone number to them and they can call me. Or it's 617-256-4005. Call me, say, listen, I heard you on the podcast. Would you mind answering some questions? And I'll give you some time and we'll chat.
Well, that's very generous. Other than your cell phone, what's another good place online or wherever to find you?
My email, lspada at spadalawgroup.com. That's about the only ways. If you call the office, you're going to get my intake people, and you're going to go through the process of being vetted. I've put up some barriers between myself and the general public so that just I could actually get work done. But my cell numbers, I don't hide my cell number. I don't give it out to every client, but people say, how can I reach you? It's my cell phone.
Well, Lynn, again, appreciate you coming on. It's been great.
Pleasure. It was nice to see you. I'll see you again soon,
Yeah,
hopefully.
thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.